Hey, what is up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to the All In podcast. I am one of the co-hosts, Mike Babzig, joined by my boy, Eli Cooper. What's up, buddy?
Not much, man. Not much. My Real Madrid boys took a tough loss to
Rough.
my brother's favorite team in Chelsea. So you're in the Oaks FC
Yes,
group
yes,
message. That did not go well for me today.
I was enjoying the conversation.
But hopefully we make a run at La Liga late here.
Yeah.
That we're 2 points back. My Eagles didn't destroy me last weekend in the draft, so I'm feeling pretty decent there as well. My sports team, and the Sixers fully healthy, back rolling again. It's looking good for me as a sports fan, man. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, it's not looking as good for me, I must say. Actually, this is weird. This is weird for us, but you know what? The Penguins are really good. I know nobody cares about hockey, including me, but the Penguins are really good. We are
take the wins
NFL,
where you can get them.
I know. And the Pirates actually are close to 500. They haven't been terrible. So, anyway, we are talking NFL draft today. We're going to do winners and losers, talk about some fantasy players who might have come in this year's draft, and then also talk about some guys that maybe got taken on day 3 in the later rounds that we think could have an impact this year. Do want to remind you to subscribe to the channel while you're here. Hit the button. Turn on notifications so you know when we go live and drop new content. That is the best way to stay up to date with us. Also, this is our 1-year anniversary episode.
Yeah, man.
So this is episode 67. We said. When did we debut? Early May
of last year. May 3rd.
May 3rd
is when it ended up dropping. Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. May 3rd. I was doing a podcast. You were doing a podcast. You texted me, FaceTimed, and said, let's just do it together.
Well, we had stopped doing both of our podcasts for a while, and then ended up bringing them together, and hence the birth of the All In podcast that you guys have come to know and love over the last year. So thank you guys for spending an hour of your week essentially listening to us.
Yeah.
Us random guys talk about sports. We appreciate you guys being with us for a year now. So thank you guys.
Absolutely. And you guys continue to show love, hitting that like button and leaving reviews. So, all right, you ready to get into this NFL draft?
Let's do it, man.
Okay. So we're going to start with winners and losers. We can kind of just go back and forth here, talk about them all. Why don't you go ahead and go first with your first winner?
So my first winner, and I think the biggest winner in this draft, was the Miami Dolphins.
Ooh.
So to recap, remember they started at the number 3 spot.
Yes.
Traded back to 12, then traded back up to 6th. And they ended up taking Jalen Waddle at the 6th pick. They also had the 18th pick in this year's draft and took Jalen Phillips, edge rusher from Miami, so he stays home. Mm-hmm. And then day 2, they bring in Javon Holland. Although Moverig was still on the board there, and if you were going to go safety, I thought he would be the first one off the board. Clearly, he was the highest rated safety that I had, and I actually had a first round grade on him. So I was shocked when 2 safeties went before him, and the Dolphins were one of the teams. But Javon Holland is a good pick. Thought it was a little bit of a reach where they got him at, but still a good haul. And then Liam Eichenberg at 42, I think, is one of the more underrated picks of the draft. Yeah. I thought he was good enough to be back end of the first round. I thought the Ravens should have took him with the 31st pick after trading away Orlando Brown Jr.
Yeah.
But Eichenberg ended up falling to Miami. I think he starts at right tackle for them right away. So to me, they got 3 first-round caliber players. These were 3 players that I think had that were capable of being drafted in the first round. And then Javon Holland was a definite second-round pick. So just of those first 4 picks, I thought they hit on all of them. If you want to talk about value-wise, I think all of those guys were great. So I thought the Dolphins had a great draft. And even picked up some future assets by moving back when they traded with San Francisco. They're in a great position, man. They were basically A lot of people were wondering, whether they were going to stick it out with Tua. I don't think Tua got a real fair shake last year. I thought he wasn't great, but it seemed like every time he struggled, they took him out and benched him. And how's he supposed to grow if he's not able to play through that? In my opinion. But this year they were kind of like, all right, let's get him everything that he needs. They signed Will Fuller in free agency. Jalen Waddle will be one of the most explosive receivers in the league from day one. They still have Gesicki. They still have DeVonta Parker, so he will have 4 legitimate targets to throw to.
Yes.
Their backfield has Myles Gaskin, who was very good for them last year when healthy. And now they get him some protection up front with Liam Eichenberg. For an offensive line that wasn't bad, but I think sliding Liam in there will make that offensive line probably one of the top 12 offensive lines in the league. They already had a good defense. Their defense performed last year. And then they added Phillips and possibly Holland, who I think will have a chance to compete for a starting safety spot on that defense. So adding that edge rusher and Phillips to bring some more pressure on quarterbacks. Miami's looking good, man. I think they might be a playoff team next year, given if Tua takes that next step forward, they could be a playoff team coming out of the AFC East.
Yeah, and we've been saying this now about the Dolphins for like 2 years or so with the way that they've managed these picks and the way that they've handled this draft capital. They've kind of been stocking up. They've made some really good deals. We think about how they fleeced the Texans for Laramie Tunsil. That's now set them up. Now, I will say we've seen teams in sports and football and in other sports below this kind of opportunity. Right, it's not out of the question that these picks never come to fruition, and we look at this as a huge mistake. You think about like the Celtics and how they've kind of almost missed their window now, even though they had stashed up all those picks, but they never made that final move. And you wonder what that final move could be, or if these draft picks turn out, maybe you don't even need that, and you're just able to build. And if Tua is that guy, like you say, I definitely think it's possible. And one of my favorite coaches in the league. As well.
Yes, agree. And for basketball, I don't love the idea of stockpiling picks unless you're planning to package them together to either move up in the draft or put them together for a star player, which I think is where the Celtics went wrong.
Right, they didn't do that.
In football, because 22 guys start for you, I'm a big proponent, and typically guys don't hit free agency until they're past their prime in the NFL. So I'm a big proponent of building through the draft, which the draft is much more important in the NFL amongst all 7 rounds than it is in the NBA for the most part. So,
definitely.
I think the Dolphins, have been on point with their rebuild, and because they've been so good with how they've drafted, they've been honestly they've put themselves in the playoff contention probably way before they even expected.
Yeah, probably they've accelerated this by probably a legitimate year or two. So, all right, let's move on now. I'll give you my biggest winner of the draft, and that was the Bears because they got Justin Fields.
Yes.
They got Justin Fields. I had Justin. He was my second best quarterback. I know Zach Wilson jumped him somewhere along the way in a lot of people's mock drafts and a lot of people's rankings. I still love Justin Fields. I tend to go with our guts. Usually – These guys, after one season of change, maybe they go back to who we thought they were. And I really like Justin Fields. And, the Bears were a playoff team last year. The defense for the last 3 seasons has been unbelievable. And we can question Matt Nagy from like a leadership perspective, but he knows how to draw offenses. You know what I mean? And I think if you give him a guy like Fields with the weapons they already have, I actually think that they could be definitely a playoff team. I think they could win the division, especially with what's going on in Green Bay. When you consider what's going on in Green Bay, the Bears are almost the favorite to win the division, right? Because we certainly don't trust the Vikings after last season. And the Lions just traded away Matthew Stafford for Jared Goff, so I don't think they're ready to compete yet either. So, the Bears immediately jump into a contending position. And then, on the flip side, one of my losers of this draft is Andy Dalton, of course, who was looking like he could come in and be the starter, and I think he would have done a good job. I think they still could have been a playoff team with him because I don't think he's terrible. I said he's better than Trubisky.
See, you're not on Twitter anymore,
Oh,
so I don't know if you ever saw this tweet. The Chicago Bears tweeted a picture of like a photoshopped Andy Dalton, and with just the only caption of the photo was QB1.
Oh,
yeah, that was about 2 to 3 weeks ago. And then they traded up and drafted Justin Fields.
Pick, right?
Oh yeah, it was like 2 to 3 weeks before the draft, because it was looking like they weren't going to be able to get one of those top 5 quarterbacks, and that tweet aged like milk.
Yeah, pretty terribly. But I think he's a loser here. But yeah, so I like the Bears. You agree with the Bears assessment?
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%. And not just because of Justin Fields, although that was an incredible pick. I think they did a great job, and I also agree with you that Justin Fields was the second best quarterback. I think he got way over evaluated throughout this process, which typically happens to black quarterbacks. That's something that isn't new. But whatever, I digress. Justin Fields, I think early on, like you said, will have weapons. He's going to have one of the best receivers in the league in Allen Robinson.
Cool.
Darnell Mooney is someone I think really benefited from this pick. I think Justin Fields is going to be better for this offense than Andy Dalton would be. However, Andy Dalton is actually a good quarterback to learn from. He's a veteran in the league. I think just having him in the QB room along with Nick Foles, if he's still going to be there, both of those guys will, be there to help Justin Fields get ready. And then the other reason I really love this draft for the Chicago Bears is Tevin Jenkins. In the second round, they got him with the 39th pick. And again, he was another guy where I thought he was he had a first round grade for me. He was someone that could have went towards the back end of the first round. He should have been the third tackle off the board, according to my rankings. But the Raiders, who I will discuss later, took Alex Leatherwood at 17. So yeah, we'll destroy them later. But it was more of a pass rusher rush at the end of the first round than an offensive tackle, as I thought it would be. But an excellent draft for Chicago. They shore up their offensive line by bringing in Tevin Jenkins, who I think is going to instantly start at right tackle for them. And then you get your QB of right now and the future in Justin Fields, which probably helps you lock down Allen Robinson too, because remember he's
absolutely. And it's funny that, we might as well go into the Raiders now because I know we probably both have them as a loser, I'm sure. And that's something that you would expect the Bears to do in the past couple of years. That's the kind of thing they've done, right? They get up to this position, and it's like clearly just take Justin Fields. That's the easy pick. And yet we're still thinking in the back of our minds, what if they, maybe they just like Andy Dalton a lot and they go get a tackle or a defensive player or something like that. Like we still have that doubt because of the Bears' history. And then, they don't do that. I think they learned from their previous mistakes, hopefully, and they went with Fields, which was a smart decision. And now the Raiders, why don't you go ahead and lay into them?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, taking Alex Leatherwood in the first round made absolutely no sense.
Yep.
Don't get me wrong. Alex Leatherwood isn't bad. I had him as a second round guy. Mm-hmm. And even if obviously these guys in these draft rooms evaluate players differently than we or any other person doing mock drafts or scouting, stuff like that. They're going to have different rankings, and that's, perfectly fine. But there's no way in the world you watched Alex Leatherwood last year and thought he was better than Christian Darrisaw, who was on the board, and Tevin Jenkins or Liam Eichenberg. Like, he was not anywhere near any of those guys. You could even argue that he wasn't better than that he wasn't a better prospect than Jalen Mayfield and some other guys that went in the second round.
Yeah.
So it really didn't make sense to me. And I'm pretty sure no one had Alex Leatherwood as a first round graded tackle. So even if you loved him, you absolutely could have got him in the second round. So value wise, that just didn't make sense. Then they turned around, they made up for it. They got Moehrig in the second round, who I had them taking at 17 in some of my mock drafts. So they kind of balanced it out, right? Because I would have been okay with Alex Leatherwood if they had gotten him at 43, like they got Moehrig, and I would have been great with Moehrig at 17. So they got great value on him. And then after that, they reached on two safeties in the third and fourth round. So they took 3 safeties in the same draft after getting the best one on the board. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yo, that is so funny though. That's so Gruden though. That's so Gruden.
And you know what? Their entire draft reeked of John Gruden trying to be the smartest guy in the entire room. Yes. I'm talking about not just his draft room, in everybody's draft room. He was trying. It's just this is clear overthinking. I know their secondary was bad. Their secondary was atrocious last year. But what are 3 safeties going to do? What are two third and fourth round safeties going to do? You can't tell me that after you take Morig, you don't have other needs to fill. You take 2 more safeties. I mean, 2 of those guys probably aren't going to start because you already had another safety on your roster. It doesn't make sense to me. And honestly, and both of the safeties that they took were not third or fourth round caliber safeties. There were other safeties again available that were better than the guys that they took. Yeah. So John Gruden to me had a terrible draft class, and they needed to have a good draft, and he just didn't. Well, after the Morik pick, I thought they were going to get right. They're not, and really this draft could have elevated them into a higher position in the AFC West. When you think about, Denver's not quite there yet because you don't know what you have in Drew Lock. Obviously, Kansas City's going to always run away with that division, but the Chargers are still, and the Chargers are still young, right? They're still young, so you had a chance to move yourself into the clear second best team in this division, and I think they blew it with the way that they drafted.
Yeah, I do too, but I think we've also, we've questioned every Gruden draft, I think, since he's gotten the job. He's gotten a couple picks right. I think most we've been right about questioning him, but he has gotten a couple in his day. So, all right, do you have another winner for us?
Yes, I do. I loved what the Chargers did.
Oh, yes.
The Chargers had an excellent draft to me.
They didn't overthink it.
Exactly. They at the 13th pick, second best tackle, and in some cases, some people have Rashawn Slater ahead of Penei Sewell. Mm-hmm. Not me, but there were some teams that did have a higher grade. So to me, they got a future All-Pro tackle. There's no doubt in my mind that this guy's a perennial All-Pro tackle. He's going to start at left tackle from day one for them. And after their free agent signings, they picked up Corey Linsley and Matt Feeler, who are guards. And then you bring in Slater. That's a top 10 offensive line, which to upgrade your offensive line that much from how bad it was last year. I mean, Justin Herbert, as great as he was running for his life. I can only imagine what he's going to do with this offensive line now. And then in the second round, they have a clear need at corner with I'm sorry, who's the corner that they have that's aging? They have an aging corner, and I'm blanking on his name right now. But they go and get Asante Samuel Jr. at 47, who could have gone at the back end of the first round. He was probably the fourth or fifth best corner in this draft, and they ended up getting him in the middle of the second. He's one of those guys where you could pit him up against anybody as far as the corners in this draft, and Asante Samuel Jr. has a case to be as good or better than those guys, and they get him in the middle of the second. And then they follow it up with Josh Palmer in the third, the wide receiver out of Tennessee. I really like Josh Palmer. I think he'll end up playing a little bit of outside and inside in the slot for them, which will give Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and Josh Palmer as his top 3 targets.
And Trey McKitty, tight end.
Yes, exactly, who was their very next pick in the third round. Tight end out of Georgia after letting go Hunter Henry. That was a position that they needed to address, and they did. So he's going to have Eckler back fully healthy. I really love what the Chargers are looking like right now, especially on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, they didn't, and then, like I said, they didn't overthink it. How many times have we seen a team like this with a young quarterback, and instead of getting the lineman with this, mid-round pick, they go for the running back or the wide receiver to pair with the quarterback. And we end up seeing it fail because there's no protection and there's no time in the pocket for the connection to happen. So I think this was the right move. And we just talked about the Raiders kind of blowing their draft. I think the Chargers ascend to the second best team in the AFC West.
Agreed.
I wouldn't be surprised at all if they were a playoff team. I think Herbert is that good. I really do.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think Herbert is every bit as good as Burrow, if not better, based on last season. So I can go ahead and give my next winner, and that's the Patriots. Actually, unfortunately, to not have to trade up.
Yes.
To just stay where you are and get the quarterback. Maybe it's not the quarterback you wanted, like the number one, but one of that group of guys, and you have this huge need, because they didn't trade up. And I'm not even saying that I think Mac Jones is going to be an all-pro quarterback. He's certainly, the Tom Brady comparisons are just ludicrous. I don't know why we keep doing this to these guys who get drafted. But I think, you mix him with a Josh McDaniels offense, it could be good. And to get him at 15, I think, is a huge win for them.
I agree. The Patriots were also in my winners list. And I love the Mac Jones pick at 15. And not because I love Mac Jones per se, but I love him at that spot.
Absolutely.
And I love when you can bring a quarterback in with no pressure on him to succeed right away.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't even know if he's going to start day one, and he doesn't have to, and he doesn't need that kind of pressure on him to be the day one starter. You have Cam Newton there, who I think we all knew wasn't their future option at the quarterback spot. But like you said, they didn't have to give up anything and still got one of the top QBs in this draft. Then when you move to the second round, Christian Barmore, who I thought might have gone to Tampa Bay at 32, but he falls to the Patriots, who actually they did move up to get Barmore in the second round. That guy was an animal at Alabama, especially towards the last in the last 5 games. He had 5 sacks in the last 5 games, and for a defensive tackle, that's incredibly impressive. He had 8 on the entire year. That was huge. So to me, they got 2 first-round talents in their first 2 picks. And Mac Jones and Barmore. And then Ronnie Perkins, the DN out of Oklahoma in the 3rd round, was a very good pick for me. I thought he could have been a late second rounder, early 3rd. They got him in the back end of the 3rd. So I thought that was a very good pick as well. So the Patriots also made my love list for this draft.
Yeah, they didn't address the wide receiver, which I think was a big issue. And they brought in Aguilar and they bring in the tight ends. So maybe that's the way they want to go with it. But I still think, if you want Mac Jones to be successful, he's going to need a big body on the outside to throw the ball to. Maybe that still is yet to come in free agency. Who knows where that comes from? But I think they've addressed it.
They're typically not a team who invest in wide receivers, either whether in free agency or in the draft. I think the one time they actually did it was Randy Moss, and we know how that turned out. But other than that, the Patriots have typically never relied on, getting like special guys at that position. And they really seem to like the 2 tight end system, even when you go back to Gronk and Aaron Hernandez. Back in those days, they were killing it. So
well, they've also missed on a lot of these wide receiver picks. They have missed on almost really every wide receiver pick, and then they lose Edelman. You just wonder, that's probably the biggest hole on Belichick's resume is that he cannot draft wide receivers. So my last winner is Sam Darnold because the Panthers did not draft a quarterback. It looks like it's going to be between him and Teddy Two Gloves, but I don't think that they would have brought in.
Oh, Teddy's gone.
Oh, Teddy's gone. Okay,
Teddy's gone. They traded him to Denver.
Yep. That's right. Oh, I forgot about that. He could challenge Drew Lock for that job.
He could, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. But so it looks like Darnold's going to be the guy in Carolina. He's going to get Christian McCaffrey, and I like these Panthers weapons. And they add Terrence Marshall in the 2nd round. He's going to have weapons. I think this is a much better situation than he was in New York.
Yeah, I agree. And mainly because the Panthers already have a solid foundation around them. New York never built around Sam Darnold. And actually, it's weird because after trading Sam Darnold, I think they did a very good job of doing that in this year's draft. They made the Jets made my winners list because of the draft that they had. Even though I don't necessarily think Zach Wilson is for sure better than Sam Darnold. I don't rate him as highly as some other people. Yeah, I'm not. I can't say for certain that that he's better than Sam Darnold.
Mm-hmm.
So, but what they did was they went out and they got him Elijah Vera Tucker, one of the best guards in the draft, and he can also play tackle. They went and got Elijah Moore in the second round or third round, and then also got Michael Carter, the running back out of North Carolina. And then in free agency, they signed Corey Davis. So they seem to be trending in the right direction with this offense. And Zach Wilson will immediately have more weapons around him than Sam Darnold ever had. But Sam Darnold, to go back to your point, is now going into a situation with DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, and Terrace Marshall Jr. as his top three receivers. And you already know Christian McCaffrey out of the backfield is elite. And then they got Chuba Hubbard late in the fourth round, who I'm going to talk a little more in depth about later. But Sam Darnold has the Carolina Panthers offensive line is solid. It's not nearly as bad as what he had in New York, especially early on. And he'll have more weapons than he ever had. If there was ever a time for him to succeed, he's not going to have anyone breathing down his neck for the starting job. If there was ever a time for this kid to succeed, now is the time.
I kind of hope he does.
I do too, because I think he got a raw deal.
Yes, absolutely. He got the worst deal out of all those quarterbacks in that draft class. So, okay, how many more winners and losers do you have?
So that was my last team winner. Can I give you one, like a round one winner?
Yes.
The Eagles. The Eagles won. The Eagles won round one by not. Thank you so much, Howie Roseman, for not blowing it. I was so scared that they were going to take Justin Fields. And again, love Justin Fields. I thought he was the second quarterback. There was rumors that Howie Roseman might take a quarterback. When he traded and when he moved up to 10, I was so scared that Justin Fields was going to be the one taken there. And I'm just like, listen, we don't know that Justin Fields is better than Jalen Hurts right away. So that pick really wouldn't have made any sense. To put yourself back in the same situation that you just put Carson Wentz in. Yes. But anyway, so for them not to do that is a win. And then to get DeVonta Smith, who I still like better than Jalen Waddle, and I was my second best receiver in this class at the 10 spot. And really, you didn't have to give up much to get him. They didn't. Now, the Eagles' entire draft, I actually really like Landon Dickerson in the second round. Although, obviously, there's health issues there with that pick, but if he's healthy, he's a round one talent for sure.
They're just getting all the Alabama guys.
Yeah, exactly. And listen, I have no problem with getting Alabama guys. They do really well in the league, right?
If you're going to load up on one team's guys, it might as well be Alabama. Exactly.
But here's why I don't have them as a winner per se for the entire draft, but I do have them as a winner for round one and the trade. So essentially, of them moving back from 6 to 12 and then moving back up to 10, here's what they got. DeVonta Smith, Zach McPherson, who was our third round pick, a 2022 first rounder from Miami, and then a 2022 first rounder from Indianapolis if Carson Wentz plays 75% of the snaps or makes the playoffs, which he likely will. The Dolphins got Jalen Waddle in a fourth round pick, and the Colts got Carson Wentz. We won that trade.
Probably.
Howie Roseman, and even if DeVonta Smith doesn't pan out, I'm sure the two first round picks next year will be great. I love DeVonta Smith. I think he's the next Marvin Harrison. I think the weight concerns were a little overblown simply because he's just so good with his route running. Yes. I think it's a little overblown, and that's the easiest thing to fix, in my opinion, is putting on strength. So I don't see that as a major problem from him, but he's one of the best route runners of rookie wide receivers that we've seen in a long time. And ultimately, that's, I think, what translates to the next level the best.
He's almost too good not to be good. Like, to be that dominant in college, some of that has to translate, right? I think it's a good one. So, okay, my last winner/loser is a loser, and it's the Texans.
Oof.
They're screwed. They're so screwed.
They lost this draft 2 years ago when they traded Larry.
They've been losing this draft every day for the past 3 years. That's how long. Seriously, every day they've been losing this draft. So Deshaun Watson is in limbo right now. We don't really know what's going to happen with that. Right? Any more plugged in on that with Twitter? Anything? Any news on that?
Not so far. It's actually been pretty quiet on that front for the last week or so.
So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, they don't have any picks until the third round. They take a quarterback, which I think is kind of interesting. But yeah, it's just going to be rough for them. I don't know how they get out of this.
Right. I mean, they were probably taking a quarterback, even if the allegations on Deshaun Watson never materialized, right? Because he wanted out. So, I think you probably get a quarterback as a contingency plan anyway. But, obviously them not picking until late in round 3 was not ideal.
Yeah.
Can I give you my last loser?
Go ahead. I'm ready. I'm ready to square up.
My last loser was the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Ooh.
I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. I did not like their draft. And here's why. Let me be very clear that I really like Najee Harris.
Yeah.
I really like Pat Freiermuth. However, neither of them address your biggest needs. Your offensive line is terrible. It's atrocious. It was so bad that Ben Roethlisberger was running quick screens all season.
Well, those are the only throws he could make. He can only throw the ball that far, so it kind of worked out just fine.
That's true.
But listen, can I defend the Steelers a little bit?
Okay,
because
go ahead.
in the next 2 picks after the tight end, they took linemen, right? So they went center, and then they went tackle after that. Both those guys that they took could be starting week 1 for this team.
I don't know. Right? I don't know that they're necessarily upgrades. They could be starting out of necessity, but I'm not sold on either one of them.
Well, I don't know. I'm not sold on either one of them either because they're 3rd and 4th round picks. But if anybody has success with 3rd and 4th rounders panning out to be contributable members to a football team, it's the Steelers. Look at the track record of these mid-round picks for this team. Some of the best players in the league have been Pittsburgh Steelers mid-round picks. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if those guys pan out. And I think the Najee Harris pick, this is a team that was last in rushing last year. And I think the argument for a lineman makes perfect sense, right? So if they would have took a lineman in this pick, I think that's fine too. But I think Najee Harris, in a league where, this is something we talk about a lot. And remember 10 years ago when this league started to go super pass, and everybody loaded up their defensive backfields, loaded up to stop the pass, and then teams slowly started to figure out, starting with the 49ers, the Ravens, the Rams, all of these successful new age offenses focused on running the ball to kind of beat this huge market shift that happened, right? It shifted too far. So 10 years ago, Najee Harris is a top 10 pick probably, right? He's that good. As far as running backs out of college go, he's really – the question was never, is he as good as these other running backs who are coming out of college? It's how high do you pick a running back in today's day and age? And I think that number is higher than what we give it credit for, despite the fact that he's probably never going to make it to a second deal. But you never know. I mean, if he's good, if he's a top 5 back, he's gonna. We're gonna talk about fantasy stuff. He's a week 1 starter in fantasy probably in a lot of leagues, because he's probably going to be a 3 down back for them. So I like that pick more than I oppose it. I would have been fine with a lineman.
Yeah, I was actually okay with that pick.
Yeah.
I think the Freiermuth is where I was questioning them, and again, as a player, he's really good. But you already have 3 really good wide receivers, and Harris out of the backfield can catch the ball. I didn't think tight end was a big need because it's not really something that's and then you already have Ebron, so it's
he can't catch.
But tight end isn't a super heavily utilized part of your offense either, so. Taking a tight end in the 2nd round when there's really good linemen on the board still was a head scratcher for me.
Yes, I was shocked by the 2nd round pick of a tight end. That one I did not like, but I like all the other ones.
And he'll probably be really good if Ben can get him the ball without, getting drilled. So he will probably be really good. So, yes. And they also they didn't take a quarterback. You didn't take a corner until the seventh round.
I like the one we got.
Yeah. So, like, he's probably going to battle for a roster spot. And, like, maybe down the line, he helps you out.
Mm-hmm.
I do like one of your late round picks. I'm going to save the name for our sleepers discussion, but it was just, I think that's where it went left for me. And then I don't think the third and fourth round linemen that you got are instant starters, which I think is what you needed out of this draft.
Yeah. I mean, they might be instant starters out of necessity, but we'll see. Trial by fire, I guess. So yeah. All right, well, that is all the winners and losers we had. Let's shift our focus to the fantasy rookies. We did this episode last year after the draft, same conversation, and I think we were pretty successful in the rookies that we projected to have an impact. So, all right, let's go ahead and open this up. Give me somebody that you really like for fantasy.
Well, here's one that I think is probably the easiest one, JaMarr Chase.
Oh, I love
JaMarr. Listen, leading up into this draft, I was very, very, very intent on the Bengals taking Sewell at 5. And the reason why was not because I didn't like JaMarr Chase. I think JaMarr Chase is an incredible talent. It's because you got to protect Burrow. I mean, that offensive line was so bad.
It's what we just said about the Chargers. You got to take the linemen, but I don't know. Yeah, go ahead.
Exactly. Now they did somewhat address their line in free agency. They brought in Riley Reif. They ended up bringing in another tackle, I believe. So maybe they were like, all right, well, we got these like veteran tackles that we've brought in. Yeah. Maybe we can wait on tackle and just take this stud of a receiver and reunite him with his college quarterback that these two broke records with. And you know what? I think it was the right call. They ended up.
I do too.
They got Jackson Carman in the second round, who he played left tackle for Clemson, but he's probably going to slide inside the guard to start, and maybe he develops into your blindside tackle for Burrow. I thought there were better tackles on the board for the Bengals there, but he's very solid. So I'm not mad at that pick. And with the way the draft went, I thought it was actually the right strategy because the second round had a ton of good offensive tackles in it since none of them went in the back end of the first. So I think they addressed their offensive line enough to keep Burrow healthy.
Yes.
And then got him the stud of a receiver. And you know what? Offensive tackles can be drafted pretty much every year. You're going to find a really good tackle in every draft class. So
in the third round, maybe like the Steelers just did.
I mean, so it's like I think getting a talent like JaMarr Chase, and not just because he's such an incredible talent, he has rapport already with Joe Burrow. And so getting Joe Burrow's favorite target from college, where both of them had record-breaking years, bodes well. And you look at a lineup of Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd, and Joe Mixon out of the backfield. This Bengals offense is looking really good. And I think JaMarr Chase instantly becomes their top guy. Actually, if we were doing losers, I'd probably say T. Higgins.
Possibly.
Or anyone who has T. Higgins in like a dynasty league probably wasn't super happy. I think Tyler Boyd will be okay, but obviously he's going to be a little bit limited on his upside. But JaMarr Chase, to me, fantasy wise, was going to the Bengals was excellent. If you're looking for one of these young rookies in fantasy this year.
It was cool how many wide receiver quarterback hookups from college happened, right? So,
all three of the first wide receivers went to their former college quarterbacks.
Tua and Smith went with Hurts. How crazy is that? So would you say you have Chase as like a wide receiver too?
Oh yeah, easily. Okay. Easily a wide receiver 2 to start. I think he has wide receiver 1 upside, obviously, depending on the target, how many targets he actually gets with those. Depends on how much Burrow spreads the ball around, which he typically does. So we'll see. But, definitely wide receiver 2, I would say, to start.
Yeah. Okay. I agree. I agree 100% with wide receiver one potential. He's that good, and Joe Burrow's that good when healthy. If they can protect him at all, that's the key.
Yep.
So I'm going to give you a guy that we have not that nobody has been talking about for the entire draft process. This guy has not been heard about, and I think he's the most obvious fantasy guy for next year, and that's Trevor Lawrence. And nobody's talking
Yeah.
about him because he was the consensus number one pick. There was no debate. There was no discussion needed.
Yeah.
It was so clear that he was going to be the number one pick that he kind of flew under the radar, just about as much as any number one overall pick can in a major sport. And I like the idea of him going in there with his running back, right, who's probably going to be the third down back. And then you have James Robinson. The Jaguars, I think, from an offensive perspective, you think about some of the stuff Minshew was able to do here and there. I think Lawrence is a lot better than Minshew and is going to be able to put up serious fantasy stats, including rushing stats. When he played against Ohio State last year in the semifinals, it was all his rushing that led them to victory that game. His running ability is just as high as anybody else, any other quarterback in this draft. So I think he's the obvious highest quarterback for me anyway. What do you think?
I agree with Trevor Lawrence being a good QB in fantasy. I don't know if he's going to be, if you're in a one QB league, like a standard league, if he's a top 10 QB right away. I think it might take a little bit, but I think like maybe midway through the season, maybe kind of like a Justin Herbert situation.
Yes.
As far from a fantasy perspective, where like right away you didn't expect him to be your starting quarterback or an elite quarterback, and then he develops into that throughout the season. I agree. I think they get him, Travis Etienne, who's going to make life easy on him as a pass catcher out of the backfield. So the Jaguars had a solid draft as well, but I think Trevor Lawrence will have. Oh, and they got Walker Little in the second round to give him some more protection. And then I can't forget James Robinson, who's going to be probably their,
he's
in between the
in
tackles
draft,
running back.
Right?
He is, unfortunately.
He was amazing last year.
And that's why I didn't really want them to take Etienne. When they took him, I was like, no, because you just took the Jaguars basically just took an RB1 away from us, a top 5 running back away from us.
Yeah.
But they have an incredible running back duo now. So from a team perspective, it makes sense. And Trevor Lawrence will ultimately be the beneficiary out of the Etienne pick. So
do you have any quarterbacks? Do you have any quarterbacks ahead of Lawrence?
In
fantasy perspective this season?
Yeah, I would say just off the top, obviously Mahomes.
No, I mean just from rookies. Just rookies.
Oh, from rookies? No.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe Justin Fields. I think
That's
the only one who really has. Right, or maybe Trey Lance. Trey Lance, maybe.
Trey Lance going to start at the beginning of the year?
That's the biggest question about him. Is like now if he's good enough to start right away, that tells me something. Because I do really like him, and he's going to have Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle to throw to. The 700 running backs that they have to throw to out of the backfield. So he will absolutely have the most weapons of all these rookie quarterbacks. So if there's anyone, I'd actually probably say Trey Lance if he's the starter. And then Justin Fields, who I think will be the starter. So I'm going to go Lawrence, Justin Fields, and then Trey Lance in third because we don't know whether he's going to start. Those are my rookie fantasy QB rankings.
Yeah, no, I agree. I like Lawrence the best, but Fields with just how good he could be from a rushing perspective too.
Yeah, that's where the upside is.
Well, Nagy likes for the rushing offense. They use Trubisky in that way, so I wouldn't be surprised anyway. I like Najee Harris as well as a fantasy guy. Like I said before, 3 down back. So I won't really go into him. But the one I think jumps, and I would say probably right now coming into this year, he's going to be tight end 3. Would you agree? Kyle Pitts jumps that high.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? He's only behind Kelsey and Kittle probably.
Yeah, and the only reason he's behind those two for sure is because Julio and Calvin Ridley are still there. And who knows if Julio is still a Falcon by the start of the season.
Yeah.
His name has come up in a lot of trade talks.
Sure.
If Julio moves, I might even like him a little bit more than George Kittle.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree.
And Darren Waller. We're forgetting Darren Waller.
Yeah.
So I would put Darren Waller at 2 actually. But then Kyle Pitts is in that 3 to 4 range immediately. It's almost unfair to even call him a tight end because of he can line up anywhere, outside slot, tight end, wherever you need him to. He can run every route. Especially if you're in a dynasty league, buy up all the shares you can of Kyle Pitts, because that kid, there's this the moon is the ceiling for that kid.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of Dynasty League, my last one I have is a quarterback that I think is worth maybe drafting and stashing for a couple weeks, and that's Kellen Mond.
Yo, that's crazy. I knew that's what we were going to say.
You know,
I knew you were going to say Kellen Mond.
I think by week 8, he could be the starter.
Listen, when the Vikings made this pick, I want to talk a little bit about RG3's reaction to it too. But when the Vikings made this pick, and I was pleasantly surprised, actually. I didn't think they were going to take a quarterback so early.
Yeah.
He has kind of like a young Colin Kaepernick feel to him with his athleticism.
Yes. His length.
And his length. And the biggest thing for me was how he has progressed every year that he's been a starter at Texas A&M. He has progressively gotten better.
Yeah.
He has tremendous upside to me. No pressure to start from day one. So like you said, like we could see him by week 8. We could see him next year replace Kirk Cousins. I love that idea of he was for dynasty leagues, late round flyer on. Round flyer on Kellen Mond.
Right.
Definitely, if you have like the roster spot for it, I love his upside.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. I think, and Kirk Cousins, it didn't go as planned last year. That's for sure. So, you wouldn't be surprised to see a change there. So, all right.
And so back to the RG3 thing. So,
sorry.
Literally right after that pick, RG3 was on some Aqib Talib's show, and they asked him. And one, I thought it was interesting that like RG3 wouldn't say Kirk Cousins' name. He kept calling him number 8 out there in Minnesota. So he was like there was a little bit of shade thrown there. Like he was basically like number 8 out there in Minnesota has been collecting checks, going 8-8 and 7-9.
Oh,
and I was like, oh man, RG3. Kirk Cousins catching strays from RG3 out of nowhere, and I think there's a little bit of resentment there because obviously they were both drafted by the Redskins same year, and RG3 was given the boot shortly after, mostly because of his injury issues, but he never. I don't know that he ever got a fair shake, so I don't know that him
after making the playoffs as a rookie,
right? And so I'm like, I don't know that him and Cousins have the greatest relationship, and
funny.
There was a lot of shade there, man. He wouldn't even say Cousins' name. He kept calling him number 8, and to me, that's what people do when they don't want to give someone attention, or how Drake doesn't say anyone's name in a rap battle. That's what it seemed like. That's what it seemed like to me.
Oh my gosh! So, okay, I agree with you. I think that's really weird. So, did he say what did he say after they took Kellen Mond?
What did RG3 say?
Yeah, did he say anything?
Yeah, that's what he was talking about. He was basically saying, he thinks Kellen Mond is going to compete for this job earlier than people expect. Yeah. So he had pretty high praise for Kellen Mond.
That's good.
In this case. So I like Kellen Mond too. And it's just funny how I kind of figured that's who you were going to bring up when you were talking about late QBs.
Okay. Do you have any more fantasy guys?
I do. Let me pull it up here. Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Oh, wow.
He was a 4th round pick for Detroit. Actually, I thought he was a early 3rd or could have gone anywhere in the 3rd round. He ended up falling to Detroit in the 4th. So a lot of people were expecting Detroit at number 7 to go with DeVonta Smith or go wide receiver there. And they ended up taking Sewell. So basically they chose protection over the skill player. And then they went D tackle with their next 2 picks and then corner. So they really didn't address the offensive side of the ball or even try to address receiver, especially with some good receivers available in the second round. And then they get Amon-Ra St. Brown to fall to them in the 4th. And Amon-Ra is a very strong athletic receiver who can win 50-50 balls. And with how much Detroit just lost from a receiver standpoint, he could absolutely be one of these day 3 guys who actually ends up being one of the top wide receivers in fantasy. Because I think from a volume standpoint, I think he's immediately the best receiver in that room. Detroit doesn't have a ton of talent there after losing Kenny Golladay, Marvin Jones, and I believe it was Danny Amendola or whoever their slot receiver was. So they lost their top 3 guys. And I think if St. Brown can build some rapport early on, I definitely think he could be like definitely in a wide receiver 2 category, but even higher up than that if he can develop himself as Goff's cleared number 1 target.
Yeah, definitely. And I like these USC receivers. There's a certain like toughness that we've seen out of them in the recent years. So I like him a lot too. And, Goff, that's going to be the question. Can Goff get him the ball, right? This is the problem that a lot of young receivers face when they get drafted by bad teams is can the quarterback get them the ball? It's not an issue for JaMarr Chase or probably won't be an issue for like Jalen Waddle, but, for it could be on this Detroit team. So, okay.
Agreed.
All right, you want to move on to our day 3 picks that we liked?
Absolutely.
Okay. Go ahead. Give him one.
Well, because I was very harsh on your Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm going to start with Quincy Roche, your 6th round pick, outside linebacker / edge rusher from Miami. Yeah. I actually think he went a little bit later than I expected him to. An edge rusher was a need for Pittsburgh. So I don't know if he's an immediate impact. Obviously, he's a 6th round pick, but edge rusher was a place that was a necessity for you guys.
Absolutely.
And I think he could help fill that role, fairly early in his career. So I'm not sleeping on Quincy Roche.
No, I like it a lot. That's a position of need with Bud Dupree out the door. So, I like it too. And I like, Trey Norwood as well, the cornerback in the 7th round as well. So I think the Steelers are going to get some late round steals. I've got Bobby Brown the 3rd for the Rams. The nose tackle, so they lost Michael Brocker, so that was a position of need to fill in. Take some of the pressure off of Aaron Donald. It's so hard for me double-teamed literally every single play. If this guy can be effective at all, he's either going to take those double teams away from Aaron Donald, or he's going to benefit from the limited coverage that he's going to have, pass blocking that he's going to have. So hopefully he can have an impact. That's a late round pick that I expect to do well.
I like it.
Yeah, I like the guy.
You know who I really liked?
Who?
Michael Carter, North Carolina running back. I mentioned his name earlier. Yeah. He went to the Jets in the 4th round. So he was part of the dynamic duo of Javonte Williams and Michael Carter. They actually were starters at separate times because I believe Carter opted out this year in 2020 due to COVID. And then Javonte Williams had a very good year this year. But for Carter, he's stepping into a Jets team that really was desperate for a running back.
Yes.
And to me, I think he's the immediate starter here for the Jets. I don't see too much competition on this roster. So technically he's a day 3 guy. I thought he probably could have gone in the 3rd round, but he fell to the 4th. So I like him as a day 3 sleeper because I think he's going to get a pretty sizable workload in New York.
Well, let me ask you this. This is a much more important question. This is Michael Carter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me ask you this. As a Sixers fan, was Michael Carter Williams a bust? Because he won Rookie of the Year.
Right.
But he really never had any impact on the franchise.
So no, I don't think he was a bust, but only because he was like the 11th pick in a really bad draft class.
Yeah.
Expectations for him weren't super high anyway. So
there was a time when they trust the process, and he was a big part of that.
And that was mostly because of how well he like came out, like guns blazing, and people were like, "Oh man, he might be our first, our point guard of the future." And obviously that didn't turn out because his jumper is probably worse than Ben Simmons.
Yes,
but he's also not 6'10", so I wouldn't call him a bust because he didn't have really that high of expectations, in my opinion. But if we're talking about based on what he did in his rookie year, then yes. After he was not even close to being the same player after his rookie year. So if we're based on that expectation, then yes, he's a bust.
Okay. Well, that was an important discussion in our NFL draft conversation. Give me another sleeper.
One guy that I think fell drastically, and maybe rightfully so, was Shaun Wade. The Ohio State cornerback went to the Ravens in the fourth, ended up dropping to the fourth round.
The Ravens.
You know what? Like, I know he was not good in 2020. Like that was pretty well documented, but I think it's because he went from nickel to outside. Like, he was very good as a nickel corner the year prior. And that's not really his role. And on this Ravens team, he's not going to be an outside corner. They still have Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters on the outside for now. And they took another corner in this draft who, when Marcus Peters, inevitably moves on from the Ravens, they can still keep Shaun Wade in the slot if that other cornerback pans out. In the nickel. So I think this was like the perfect fit for him. And I understand why he dropped. I really do, because he was bad. It's just bad. Plain and simple. He was bad. But for the Ravens, you had to be looking at this like, hey, man, in the fourth round, it's very low risk. Fifth round. Yes, I'm sorry. I thought I had him at fourth.
I can't believe he fell that far.
Yeah, that far. I think that was drastic. And the Ravens were like, well, if we can put this guy back into his nickel position, fifth round, there's literally no risk there. I think that was an excellent pick for the Ravens. And I think Shaun Wade will prove a lot of people wrong by being able to play in the role that he's best at.
Oh yeah, they're going to put him in that nickel role, like you mentioned. He's gonna succeed there. He's gonna be good. Like I don't know. This is a guy who we thought was a first round talent. I do this a lot with guys who have like a bad year or something, and it's like you expect them to be who we thought they were. It's still more likely that they will. So I think he's a steal in the fifth round. I think he's a steal.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So the next one I have is stay in my division. This show's getting worse and worse for me, and that's the Browns with James Hudson, the tackle, kind of just adding depth. That's the thing. Talking to a lot of Cleveland fans out here, they literally are like, we don't know what the hole is that we need to fill. You know what I mean? And I'm like, this is sickening. This is absolutely sickening. The freaking Browns. They're not supposed to be good at football. Of all things, there are a few truths in life, and that's one of them is that the Browns will be bad. And it's messing with me, man.
You know what? And the Browns had a very good draft, if you ask me. Greg Newsome in the first round, Jeremiah Owusu-Karamoah, the inside linebacker from Notre Dame, fell to them in the second round after some. There were no reports of this, but I had him in like mid first, and most people had him like as a top 15 prospect out of all the players available. He ends up falling to 52. But yeah, I really like what the Browns did in this draft. They did not have a ton of needs. Nope. And the needs that, I guess the places where they weren't like great at, they got a lot better at, like the linebacker, corner. I would not have a lot of faith in you guys making the playoffs next year.
Dude, it's not looking good, man. I'm looking around at this division, and I see the Browns looking good and getting better and young. The Ravens looking young and good and getting better. The Bengals are young and getting better.
Yeah.
It's you
guys are treading in the wrong direction.
Listen, every team is cyclical. There are dark times and there are good times, and we may be headed for dark times.
Yeah,
which is unusual for us, unless we're talking about the Pirates. So, okay, did you have any more late round guys?
Last one.
Okay.
Jabril Cox.
Ooh.
Linebackers, hybrid linebacker / safety. He ended up falling to the 4th round. I thought he was a 3rd round quality player. Went to the Cowboys, kid out of LSU. And they had a very defensive draft. Very unlike Jerry Jones to have the draft that the Cowboys did this year. And I'm a little bit concerned. They took
I thought it was a good draft.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I thought it was a very good draft for them. Maybe Kelvin Joseph over Asante Samuel was a little questionable.
Sure.
Asante Samuel Jr., I'm sorry. But still a very good corner. But Micah Parsons joining a linebacking crew with Jalen Smith and Vander Esch. Now, they didn't pick up the 5th-year option on Vander Esch, so maybe his injury history they didn't love, but they'll still have him for this year. And then that's where I think next year, if they're not going to bring Vander Esch back, or if he continues with injury problems, that's where Jabril Cox will end up getting his opportunity. Because I think Micah can play all 3 linebacker spots. I think they'll probably start him outside.
He's really good.
Yeah, and then move him. And when they move on from Vander Esch, they'll move him in and have Cox in this safety / outside linebacker hybrid role. And maybe like in their nickel packages, Cox might be in that linebacker spot, something like that. I think he has incredible instincts to me. And because he's so dynamic as far as being able to play safety or linebacker, I think he could be a late round steal for the Cowboys, who had a very good defensive draft.
Cowboys the favorites in the NFC East right now?
Yeah.
I think they are.
Yes, I think they are.
Assuming Dak is
fully healthy and their offensive line stays healthy. I think that is also crucial because they were really banged up front. They have the best offense by far.
Yeah.
I think they have probably the 2nd or 3rd best defense now after this draft. The Redskins have the best to me. And I think the Eagles might, actually, I think the Eagles, Giants, and Cowboys could all kind of fall in the same range.
Giants defense is solid.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So like they're kind of all in the same range for me. Yeah. But because the Cowboys offense is so elite, I do have them as the favorites to win the NFC East until the Eagles load up in 2022 and get back to top tier in the division.
Yeah, that'll definitely happen. I'm sure. All right, that is everything that we had to talk about today. Eli, why don't you tell the people what's going on at the All In Network?
Listen up, guys. We have a ton going on at the All In Network. Last week, All In Politics just dropped a new episode with our guy, Jeff Moore, who was on the early days of the podcast. He was one of the first guys that joined us when we started using YouTube. So he joined All In Politics to talk a little bit more about his expertise in Black life insurance and the importance of it. They also got into some very intriguing political discussions with Biden giving his congressional address recently. So great episode. Yeah, kind of like thing. So make sure you guys tune in to that here on our YouTube channel, or if you're listening on the audio platforms, Apple, Spotify, Anchor, any of those places. And then on our website, there's plenty of articles you can see. Me and my older brother Kyle, who from the All In Bets and DFS website, were very busy leading up to the draft and even a little bit afterwards. So you can go to allinnetwork.net to read those articles as well. And don't forget, we just got a new app update on the Google Play Store. So if you're an Android user, I feel bad for you like 99% of the time, but this is the 1% of the time where it's actually a good time to be an Android user. The Google Play Store, our app looks really great on there. So make sure you download that so you can stay up to date with our social media, our website. You can find our YouTube channel. Everything All In Network related is right there on the app at the touch of a button. So those are the things we got going on. And then for those of you gambling not alcoholics, but you gambling addicts, make sure you guys head over to MyBookieAG and use the promo code AllInPod.
I have a story about MyBookie.ag. On Saturday was the Kentucky Derby. Was watching it with a buddy out here in Ohio, where you cannot use sites like FanDuel or what's the other one called? I don't even know because they're not
DraftKings.
DraftKings, because I have no idea. So mybookie.ag saw a horse with the name of a town that is not too far from where I live. We bet on it 14-1. This freaking horse won. Medina Spirit. Medina Spirit, baby.
No.
MyBookie.ag got paid out like this. And with Bitcoin, I had it within like an hour in my bank account the next day. Couldn't believe it. Could not believe it.
Okay, so we're going to talk about your gambling addiction.
No.
I always listen. Me and my dad were just talking about this the other day. We're like, he told my mom. He said, "Listen, if I start betting on horses, then we have a problem."
Bro, it was the
betting
most
on horses.
Fun.
Come on, man.
It was the most fun I've ever had gambling because the thing is, normally whenever I watch horses, they always have like the names basically over the horse the whole time. They didn't do that this time. So I saw my horse at the beginning. They put the name up. I lost it. I had no idea where my horse was. They put the name up. It's in first. Right? And then I see a horse like catching up to it. They take the names off. And then I lose it again. I don't know if it's in first, if it's in second. They don't put the names up until after the race. The race is over. And then they cut to the celebrating team and they put up Medina Spirit winner. And I was doing big fist pumps at my house. So
that's a nice come up. That is
MyBookie.
It's very difficult to win on horse racing. Yes. That is a very nice bet. Well done.
MyBookie.ag. That's the place to go, guys. So leave a comment on the YouTube channel. Let us know what you want us to talk about. If you think we should go live more, let us know. Even submit questions for us to talk about on the pod. We appreciate all of those. So, all right, guys. This was episode 67 of the All In podcast. We'll talk to you next week.
See you guys. Thanks for tuning in.